Dragon's Dogma 2 is just around the corner, and I have some concerns about it that I want to address in this video. Hey, what's up guys, welcome to my second channel. I'm Click for Gameplay, and on my second channel we're going to talk about, well, pretty much everything I want to talk about in the gaming industry and about games, obviously. I want to keep my first channel, my primary channel, for stuff like reviews, retrospectives, and, you know, my regular RPG series if you follow me over there. I'm a massive fan of Dragon's Dogma, as you probably know if you follow my first channel, because in the past I made at least a couple of videos about the game, about the combat system, about the range gameplay and stuff like that. And I always had one bigger issue, we can say, with the game, and that would be enemy variety. One of the main reasons why the combat system in Dragon's Dogma 1 was so freaking good was the AI system. The AI system was so freaking good, up to the point where it puts all major AAA RPGs to shame, basically, especially in combat, because the pawn AI, for example, could adapt, could learn as you play the game, they could learn more stuff, learn how to fight enemies, learn about quests and stuff like that. The complex AI behavior from the first game was one of the main reasons why we couldn't see so many different enemy types in the game. I mean, if you just think about it, it's very logical, because if you have such an in-depth AI system, you can't exactly make hundreds of different enemy types like some RPGs can manage to do, but those other RPGs usually have a very simplistic AI behavior, especially in combat. I always wondered if we're going to have more enemy types in the sequel, which we obviously do according to some trailers, but we can also see a lot of the pretty much the same enemies in the sequel, which is fine in a way, right? You know what to expect if you play the first game, and the sequel is obviously a lot improved, not just graphically. The combat mechanics look a lot better, the animations look smoother and all of that stuff, right? But I'm still kind of worried about the general enemy variety and how many enemies we're going to fight in the sequel. The first time I played Dragon's Dogma 1, I basically quit after like 10 hours because it felt like a Goblin Slayer simulator basically, and I kinda got tired of fighting goblins around every corner. There was also a very annoying escort quest that you have to do in the beginning, which could turn some people off because they could get the false picture of the game in general, because the game is nothing like that escort quest that you have to do in the beginning when you first get to Grand Soren. I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. But if you manage to stick with the game and go through all of that, and if you enjoy good combat in action RPGs, you're going to find a real, well, we can't say hidden gem anymore, because Dragon's Dogma has been popping lately. A lot of new players have started Dragon's Dogma 1 for the first time ever, obviously because of the massive popularity of Dragon's Dogma 2 trailers. But then again, we couldn't see a lot of different enemy types in Dragon's Dogma 2 trailers, and there could be two reasons for that. The first reason would be that they're trying their best to not spoil a lot of things in the game and let the player discover these enemy types and the game in general by themselves, right? And try to minimize the spoilers in the trailers. And so far we could see a lot of the same enemy types from the first game, like the Griffin fight, which looks pretty much the same, Crystal Golem fight, ogres and stuff like that. Although we did see a couple of unique dragon fights, the big stone golem that comes from the sea, which is like, I mean, it's cool, but it's not exactly what I'm looking for from the sequel, because it looks like it's going to be a, you know, a heavily scripted event where you get to fight this huge monster, which is definitely a very welcome feature, but it's not something that I'm really excited for. I'm much more excited to see if they're going to manage to include a lot more enemy types in the sequel, a lot more boss fights within dungeons, the open world and stuff like that. This is something that Capcom managed to improve in the DLC for the first game, the Bitter Black Isle. Bitter Black Isle is like a massive expansion, and to tell you the truth, I think it's one of the best DLCs for any game ever. Once again, it's also kind of hard to get into because you need a very high level character, and even when you beat the campaign, your character still might not have the appropriate level to go and start Bitter Black Isle. It will kick your ass basically if you're not at least level 70 or 75. But then again, it's very hard to let go when you finally get into it, and when your character is high level, when you have a good party of characters to clear the whole DLC. It's really amazing. On the bright side, if the sequel doesn't manage to have such great enemy variety, that only means that the existing enemies in the game will be more polished, and they'll have more reactions to the environment, to the players, to the pawns. Like I said, it's not make it or break it situation, but it can also kind of ruin the game for some people that are expecting to find new enemy types around every corner of the map, in dungeons and stuff like that. It can be very disappointing to some people that are coming into the sequel blind, and they have no idea about how the first game worked and why the combat in Dragon's Dogma 1 was so good as it was. That's why you could also say that the small amount of enemy types in the first game was one of the biggest strengths of the game. So the second reason why we couldn't see many different enemy types in the trailers for the sequel is very obvious. They don't exist. But then again, we could also see a lot of gameplay clips for the sequel where enemy AI is reacting properly to the environment and the player, and it seems like they're very polished, just like in the first game. So yeah, one of the main reasons why I wanted to make this video is like a heads up to new players that are expecting to find, I don't know, a massive amount of different enemy types like in some other RPGs. And I'm here to say that you shouldn't be disappointed if this happens, because that only means that Capcom was probably working very hard to polish up the existing enemy types in the game, to properly react to your pawns, to your player, to the environment as well, which is very important for making that open world which feels alive. We can also see some massive improvements to the pawn AI and how NPCs react to a player, the populated cities and places in the sequel, which is very important because I think the first game kind of failed when it comes to making the open world feel alive, even though you could meet some pawns in the open world from other players, which was phenomenal actually, but besides that, I didn't really feel that the open world feels that much alive like, I don't know, some other RPGs like, I don't know, like Gothic for example, which didn't have nowhere near the great combat system like Dragon's Dogma, but the out-of-combat AI was very good when it comes to NPC schedule and stuff like that. But fortunately we could see a lot of improvements on that field, and you can actually pull monsters in the city and make them fight the NPCs, which is kind of cool. So yeah, we can see a lot of improvements on the open world field, and why such complex AI behavior is making the world feel alive as well. So tell me your opinion about enemy variety and the stuff we talked about in the video. Do you agree, disagree? Do you expect to find a lot of unique enemies to fight? And would you rather have less enemy types but more complex AI behavior in combat, or the other way around? Would you rather have more enemy types and a bit simpler AI behavior in combat? I would certainly go for the first option because I think it makes the world feel alive. Not only the combat, it makes like yeah, it makes the world feel alive because you can tell that the AI is reacting properly to the environments, to the player and stuff like that. So let me know in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, this is my second channel where we talk about stuff like, I don't know, games in general, stuff that I don't get to cover on the first channel, so be sure to subscribe and like the video, that would mean a lot.